We will discuss adding and subtracting fractions. When I say adding fractions, I'm really talking about subtracting too. Remember that when you add a negative, it's the same as subtracting. So adding and subtracting have the same rules. 2 hints to remember when you're adding or subtracting. Number 1, you have to have a common denominator. And number 2, tops only. We're going to talk about 2 different types of problems, those that already have a common denominator and those that don't. To add or subtract fractions that already have a common denominator, just add or subtract the numerators. Keep the same denominator. For example, 3/8 plus 1/8. Keep the same denominator, 8, and add your numerators. 4/8. Reduce. You may look at 4/8 and know that it reduces to 1/2. That's fine. Otherwise, divide out of both top and bottom of 4. So the numerator is 1, the denominator is 2, 1/2. The denominator is 10. Keep the denominator. 7 plus -3 is 4. A 2 can divide out of both top and bottom, so we will reduce. And your answer is 2/5. If you do not have a common denominator already, the steps are a little bit more complicated. Number 1, you'll find a common denominator by finding the least common multiple of the denominators. Number 2, you will unreduce the fractions. Number 3, add the numerators. Number 4, reduce. So for example, the first problem, I want the least common multiple of 6 and 10. That means I want a number that both 6 and 10 divide evenly into. It will be a number larger than 6 and 10. In this case, 30 will work. 6 divides into 30 evenly, 5 times, and 10 divides evenly into 30, 5 times. So that is my common denominator. Next, put your signs in here. I've got a negative and I've got a positive. Since I'm dealing only with the numerators when I add, I like to put the signs in front of the numerators. Next, we want to unreduce. We want to turn -5/6 into its equivalent fraction with the 30 in the denominator. I look at the denominators for clues. 6, how did that get turned into 30? By timesing by 5. Since I times by 5 on the bottom, I'm going to times by 5 on the top as well, giving me -25 in my numerator. So -5/6 is the same value as -25/30. If you ate a pie that was cut into 6 slices and you ate 5 of them, that would be the same thing as a pie cut into 30 slices and you ate 25 of them. Okay. How did 10 get turned into 30? Well, times by 3. So I'll times by 3 on the top too, giving me 9. I have turned -5/6 and 3/10 into their equivalent fractions. Next, I add the numerators. -25 plus 9. Think money. You're $25 in the hole. You win 9 back. You're still in the hole, but not as far. -16/30. And last, reduce. They're both even numbers, so I know I can divide a 2 out of both top and bottom, giving me -8/15. You may have the negative up here with the 8, or out here in front of the fraction, or with the denominator, but not with both. You notice I've written the same problem again. I want to show some people are not good at finding these common denominators, like the 30 in our previous example. One way that always works If you want to know a number that 6 and 10 will for sure divide into evenly, just multiply the two. 6 times 10, you get 60. You may have to reduce more at the end, but it's a good way of finding a common denominator that works for sure every time. 6 divides into 60. Okay, well, how did it turn into 60? 6 times 10 makes 60. So I'll multiply by 10 on the top as well, which gives me negative 50 plus. Now, how did 10 get turned into 60? Well, by multiplying by 6. So I do that on the top as well. Negative 50 over 60 plus 18 over 60. Add your tops only. And reduce. I see that they're both even, so a 2 divides out of there evenly. They're still even, so I can divide another 2 out. And you see that I get the same answer, negative 8/15. If you look here, instead of dividing by 2 and dividing by 2, I could have divided both of my original numbers here by 4. That would have brought me right to negative 8/15. So it doesn't matter if you divide all at once or divide little by little. 1/2 plus 1/4. You may be able to do this one in your head. Think of pies. If you have a half a pie plus a fourth of a pie, you've eaten 3/4 of the pie. To do this with common denominators, you want a number that both 2 and 4 divide into evenly. 4 will work. 2 divides into that, and so does 4. So how did the 2 get turned into a 4? By multiplying by 2. So I multiply the top by 2 as well. I get 2/4. And then 1/4 will stay 1/4. Add your numerators. Your answer is 3/4. That's reduced. 6 and 9, finding a common denominator. There are a bunch that will work here. 6 times 9 is 54. 54 would work as a common denominator. 36 would work. 6 and 9 both divide evenly into 36. The smallest one is 18. 6 and 9 both divide evenly into 18. Now I need to unreduce. Turn 5/6 into 18ths. 6 gets turned into 18 by multiplying by 3. So 3 times 5 is 15. 9 gets turned into 18 by multiplying by 2. So multiply the numerator by 2 as well. Get your sign in there correctly. And your answer is 11/18, which does not reduce. 3/8 minus negative 3/4. The first thing to deal with here is minus a negative. Remember that when we minus a negative, that's the same thing as adding. I'm going to rewrite this problem. 3/8 plus 3/4. Now get a common denominator. 8 will work as my common denominator because 8 divides into it, so does 4. 16 would also work. 32 would also work. So 3/8. So how does this fraction get turned into eighths? Well, the 4 would be multiplied by 2 to get to 8. So I multiply my numerator by 2 as well. Add your numerators, leave your bottoms the same, 9/8. This is reduced. Some people change this to 1 1/8, the mixed number, which is fine. That will not be marked wrong. I would rather that you leave it as an improper but reduced fraction. Negative 1/2 minus 5/8. Your common denominator is again 8. 2 divides evenly into that, and so does 8. You could also use 16. How did the 2 get turned into an 8? by multiplying by 4. So multiply your numerator by 4 also, you get negative 4. And then the eighths are already in eighths. Notice how I have the negative signs with my numerators. Negative 4 and a negative 5. Keep your denominator the same and add your numerators. Negative 4, negative 5. Think money. Lose $4, lose $5. I'm 9 in the hole. Negative 9/8. Again, a little bit on negatives. I can write this answer as negative 9/8. Or I could put the negative sign out in front of the fraction, negative 9/8. It would also be legal, although you probably wouldn't do it, but it also would be legal to put it with a denominator like that. What you can't do is have a negative sign with both. Especially when we are adding fractions, I usually keep it with the numerator since we're doing all of our adding and subtracting in our numerators only.